Ballpark Digest broadcaster chat. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, rejoined by Mick Gillispie and Ballpark Digest's own Kevin Reichard. First, Mick, good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you guys.
Kevin, how are you?
I am good. Welcome to everyone for season 3
Let's
of
do this.
amazing season 3. Didn't think we were going to ever have that happen.
And it comes at the conclusion of the Major League Baseball season has come. It has gone. It ended in early November. The Atlanta Braves are your world champions. Mick, your thoughts about the major leagues of 2021?
Yeah, I was glad to see the Braves won. Obviously in the South, everyone down here seems to be a Braves fan. So it was great to see Jorge Soler, a guy that I spent a lot of time with, lead the team to the pinnacle of baseball. And I liked it because they've honored Hank Aaron all year, and I thought they should have won last year, to be honest with you. If they would have ran the bases a little bit better against the Dodgers, they would have won that series, and then they probably would have won the entire thing. But give them a lot of credit because they didn't have an easy year, and they found a way to get things done. It was exciting. I was glad to see a team besides the Dodgers get there. It just kind of felt like I didn't want the Astros to win. We talked about it on this before, but the fact that none of the players got in trouble at all for cheating still bothers me. And so to me, it was like the perfect ending.
Little fear of missing out for Ronald Acuna Jr. Hey, welcome back to the team next year. Here's everybody with their rings as you were watching. But to me, and Kevin, I want to turn to you. To my mind, the postseason kept me on my toes because everything that I was expecting didn't happen. I was expecting the Brewers to knock out the Braves. I was expecting either the Dodgers or the Giants to represent the National League in the World Series. I was expecting the Tampa Bay Rays to get to the World Series. And then they got knocked out by Boston, who got knocked out by Houston. It was the unexpectedness of every round of the postseason kept me on my toes, which I enjoy as a baseball fan.
And caused by totally unexpected factors in many ways. The Brewers you would have picked obviously because of the pitching staff. Well, what's his name went down with a broken hand in a celebration after they clinched. And of course that team's all a bunch of 240 hitters. So if they're not the pitching, they don't win. You had Eddie Rosario, who has got to be the biggest streak hitter ever in the history of baseball, get on one of his streaks, and was a prime part of the Braves win. Will he be with the team come next trade deadline? No one. I mean, he's a free agent. He was, so. Is someone going to overpay for the World Series magic? I don't think the Braves will. So we'll see what happens next year. But man, it was a pretty good playoff situation for everyone involved. The Dodgers obviously were a little tired against, in the playoffs, because I was out there the week before the season ended, and they were intense against the Brewers to, try to beat the Giants in the standings. And that was I went to 2 of the games, very high energy games, but man, when you're working so hard before the playoffs even begin, it's hard to carry through.
I think that's an important point, was the pure attrition of how many players that we saw go down either during the season or into the postseason, and the Dodgers were devastated by significant injuries.
Yeah, I mean, I was there at the Dodgers game when Kershaw went down. And there was just this collective, groan in the ballpark. And even though they swept the Brewers, and the Brewers weren't working too hard because they'd already clinched and had nothing to lose or gain, they were still expending a lot of energy. And when you people like that go down, it's hard to beat better teams in the next few rounds of play.
It's interesting too that the Atlanta Braves won one World Series with the greatest starting rotation in baseball history. And now here we go. The Braves rising back up, but what, did they win 88 games in the regular season? And here you go. Atlanta, here's your second World Series title.
Yeah, but look, I got to say this. just having seen the Braves and the way that their system works for the last 15 years, it doesn't surprise me that they won a championship. They don't make bad trades. I mean, and look at all of the teams in the playoffs. How many guys from the Cubs did everyone have that were pivotal players, right? I mean, not just Soler, but Rizzo and Brian and this guy and that guy and this guy and that guy. It's hard to kind of keep a championship team together. But you look back at a lot of the trades just that the Cubs made, for example, like Jorge Soler, and it wasn't, it was for a relief pitcher. They got Wade Davis back for him on a 1-year deal. And all Soler's done is win a home run crown and now an MVP, right? Braves don't make those kind of trades. As a matter of fact, they make the opposite trades. Dansby Swanson was a pick of the Arizona Diamondbacks that the Braves got in a trade that got the entire front office fired pretty much, right? They keep their young players. They constantly have star guys coming up. Albies, Acuna. I remember when Freddie Freeman came up, he was homegrown. He was on the same team as Jason Hayward. And he's stuck around and been a part of it. Riley over at third. You look at their team, and I know it was some trade deadline guys that helped come in and light that fire this year. But for the most part, the pitching is developed in the minor leagues. They let the guys go out and throw. They're not pulling them out after 80 pitches. They let them really go out and develop as starters, 100, sometimes more pitches in the minor leagues. And it's all paid off. Scouting, development, and then a belief in their farm system. Now, part of that could be that they don't have the money to go out and just waste it on players and free agents and, 10-year deals and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they've constantly been good. And the other thing that I've talked about on here a lot is that I believe that winning is part of developing. Teams like the Braves and the Cardinals, just having seen them and the way they operate in the minor leagues, they're not giving up games. They don't treat them like the rec games. They treat them like they're real games, and that the guys need to go out there and win them just like they're going to do in the big leagues. And obviously it's paid off.
About Alex Anthopoulos. So when he was with the Toronto Blue Jays, that was the story was Anthopoulos had traded so many Blue Jays minor leaguers and prospects, and of all of them, probably only Noah Syndergaard has started to scratch the surface of his great talent, although injuries have hampered him. A lot of players, though, traded off, and so there was the story of the hard conversation held between Anthopoulos and Mark Shapiro, and then Anthopoulos, not too long after that, leaves Toronto. And what he has done with Atlanta has been, as you say, Mick, the same sort of thing that we saw in Toronto, which was the aggressive deals to improve the team at the major league level. And hey, check, it worked.
Yep, it worked. And I think you look at it and you say, hey, this guy made these trades in this place. Atlanta's had this deal going for a long time. It goes long before him. I mean, every single GM they've had has developed talent and let the guys play, so I think that it's more of an ownership thing, than anything else, because ownership does have a say in some places on how things are done. I remember when Tom Ricketts bought the Cubs and he was saying, hey, we're going to develop and we're going to have a farm system and we're going to invest in that. And it worked. I mean, it was a big push. And then, Theo started making a lot of these trades where he was sending guys out, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't work. But the Braves, just like the Dodgers too. I mean, you look at the Dodgers and they've been consistently good over the years, and it's the same thing. Tell me where they've given up one of the really good, young, talented players and haven't gotten back an absolute superstar in return, right? I mean, they do a great job of holding on to the really good players. And a lot like the Braves, when they make these trades, the guys they give up don't normally turn out to be very good.
The Dodgers did have that ownership crisis with the McCourts, and then they came through that.
Right. Yeah. But I'm saying, like, lately, since they brought over the team from Tampa Bay, it's been like, a lot of teams are looking at their guys and saying, hey, we would really like this guy. We would really like that guy. And if they're, what I'm saying is that their internal scouting is really good, and they listen to what their internal scouting is telling them. So they know what they have. and the Braves are the same way. They know what they have. So they got rid of Jason Hayward and they kept Freddie Freeman, and honestly, I mean, it looks like that was a pretty good move by them, right? I mean, I don't know if Freddie sticks around now because, he's going to want big money. And as much as everyone in Atlanta loves him, I just can't imagine them overpaying for anyone, even with the new stadium and all the excitement. I'd love for their fan base to see him be an all-time Brave and not leave, kind of like Chipper. But I don't know if that's going to happen. But I've been saying this not just now, but for years, just how impressed I've been with Atlanta and the Dodgers too. Just throw them in there in the same capacity, and just the way that they've been able to scout and draft and develop, and then stick with the right players to kind of build what they have right now. And like I said before, the Braves really should have beat the Dodgers last year. They could have won back-to-back World Series.
Well, I think that's an important contrast with, you mentioned the Cubs, and I'll also add in the Nationals, the ability to have staying power. As we've just seen this past year, those two franchises tore it down and went full fire sale. And though Juan Soto is still in DC and should be in DC for the foreseeable future, as they anchor the future of the franchise around him, it's a difficult thing to do, to go through years upon years and consistently win in this current way to play baseball and way to win baseball organizationally.
Well, yeah, let me say one more thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kevin. One last thing. Well, kind of talking about the Cubs, I feel like with the Cubs, they won the World Series, and I feel like I'm in a time warp, honestly. And I love the Cubs. Look, I've been a Cubs fan my whole life. I love being a part of the organization, whatever that might mean. And I've done a lot of cool things with the Cubs, and I love them. But I felt like they were in a spot where they had to make moves because they hadn't won in forever. They got the World Series, and the fans love those guys. They're immortal. The problem is that, 2017 is a different season. 2018 is a different season. 2019 is a different season. And I think the feel around the Wrigley Field was, hey, we won the World Series. Well, you won the World Series. You won that it was 2 years ago. It was 3 years ago. It was 4 years. You didn't win the World Series anymore. I mean, you were champs in 2016. Being around Alabama and seeing the way that Nick Saban does it, Alabama won the national championship in 2020, but they're not the champs in his mind anymore. That was last year's team. And and this is a big criticism of people that I love and respect, but I just don't think the Cubs did a good enough job of establishing that. I still get on Twitter and Marquis playing the games from 2016. I mean, it's like we're living in 2016, and it's great and it's fun and and all that kind of stuff. But what happens is, and Jesse, you'll appreciate this, and hold your thought, Kevin, because I'm throwing it right to you here. But we grew up in Baltimore. The Orioles won in '83. Well, they had won before. They won in '83. They haven't won since. So it all of a sudden, it just like 83, it didn't seem so far ago when we were kids, when you still had Cal Ripken and Eddie Murray and, Jim Palmer and all these guys. And then eventually they start to slip away, no more Mike Boddicker. And now it's been decades and they're not even sniffing a World Series. So, the bottom line is that somehow you have to stay hungry to continue to win. And the Cubs didn't do that. And I think that's why they got rid of a lot of those guys.
Yeah, I was going to bring up something. You had mentioned the ownership being key to this. It's interesting that the Dodgers and the Braves have corporate finance overlords who are not baseball people in the least. Liberty Media makes no pretension of running the Braves front office in terms of player acquisition. Similarly, Guggenheim Partners has no, what I've ever seen as any involvement in player decisions. They leave the baseball decisions up to the baseball people. And if you're Tom Ricketts, you may not feel that firewall's necessary because you got more personally wrapped up in all this stuff. But man, I'll tell you, I just do not see anything wrong with the way their corporate structures are handled right now. And that's why I think both teams will continue winning. They'll let the baseball people run the baseball operations.
It's funny because all that gets micromanaged is the wrong word. Whenever a team wins, every other team looks at them and says, what can we do to copy them? what can we do to emulate whatever it is? How can we be more like the Rays? How can we be more like the Dodgers? And now, how can we be more like Atlanta? And it's fascinating to say, actually, what if you looked all the way up the ladder? What if you looked right all the way up to the top and see how the decisions come down and say, can we emulate that sort of structure?
And you look at the Braves, I mean, they're run by baseball people. Terry McGurk and John Sherholtz have been in baseball forever and a day. And when the Dodgers needed to fill in some front office stuff, they went and got what they thought was, one of the smartest minds in baseball, and Andrew Friedman, and I think they're right. And then they kept their mitts off, basically.
I do think that's funny, Mick, you bringing up Alabama. I remember when I lived in Alabama in the 2000s and things were not going well pre-Saban, that it felt like it had been a long time since they had won. Can you imagine if Alabama had gone 108 years between winning national titles?
Yeah, it wouldn't be Alabama. It'd be Vanderbilt or Mississippi State or, a host of other schools, right? But you're right. I mean, you were there during the time that I was in school and just gotten out of school. And I remember all the losing and, what they've been able to accomplish now is something that any person that runs a sports team, whether it's college football, baseball, hockey, they can look to what Nick Saban and guys like Bill Belichick have been able to establish and learn from it. And the bottom line is this, is that to continue to win, you can't look back at what you've accomplished. You have to be looking forward. And it's really hard to do that because especially with the Cubs, it was just such a monumental win. I mean, like you said, 107 years, I hadn't won, and everyone's excited. And it's honestly, it's the championship of a lifetime, of lifetimes maybe, but to have a dynasty, to continue to win, you just got to put the ring up and move forward. And it's mentally, they just didn't do that. And they missed an opportunity to be one of the greatest dynasties ever. The Cubs, they could have done it. They had the players to do it.
But in fairness, there are so few MLB dynasties anymore. Yep. I mean, there's a lot of, it's underrated in terms of parity in Major League Baseball right now. Because what's the figure? 14 teams have won in the last 20 some years. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, looking at the actual teams that have won the World Series compared to the amount of teams in the league and contrasting baseball with all the other big sports leagues. And baseball has the advantage in terms of franchises who've tasted the glory at the top.
And hey, if it's
the Yankees.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the Yankees and the A's, like they're really the only dynasties. I mean, the A's in the 70s and the Yankees a bunch of times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, could be Tampa Bay next year very easily. Right. Throw another team into the mix of winners that never won.
I think what gets confused for that, Kevin, is just in speaking about dynasties, when we go into next year, we'll expect the White Sox to be good. We'll expect the Astros to be good, and Boston and the Yanks and the Rays and the Blue Jays should be good. And there's this expectation of who's going to compete. And there's this expectation of the teams that going into next year, once again, don't have a prayer. That's where baseball still has that trouble of when is it that the Baltimore Orioles will once again actually look forward to winning games?
Well, I think we know when that'll be. But look at the Giants this year. I mean, they could have easily been in last place. Padres faded, could have easily been in first place with better management. And so they went out and got a manager.
Yeah, well, on that note, okay, so now I'm in the athletics organization, right, with the Lansing Lugnuts high Oakland affiliate. Boy, the A's have hit a crossroads. So the manager is headed to San Diego. They went all in with their trade deadline acquisitions, and now those players are going to leave. Starling Marte was great, but they didn't make the postseason in the end. And so, boy, Oakland looking ahead to next year and who's going to be the manager, who's going to be where in the front office, and who are going to be the players on their team. It's such a fascinating franchise for me to now see up close and personal, even as, Kevin, on the business side of it, the talks continue in terms of which stadium are the A's going to play in the near to far-flung future.
Oh, it's absolutely fascinating talking to people about this because the Las Vegas folks I talk with now are utterly convinced they'll end up there. The Oakland folks are now utterly convinced they'll stay there. And the A's have just been masterful at maneuvering and performing Jedi mind tricks to get to the position they're in right now. I mean, I think 6 months ago, no one thought they'd get a new ballpark at either spot. And right now, it kind of looks like they have the choice of venues and cities and development plans and are in a position of strength. But, I think the team's going to kind of suck in the next few years after they make a deal for the ballpark. I mean, it worked. They're getting a new ballpark because they won and people have a happy feeling about them.
Freddie Freeman goes to greener pastures. Bob Melvin went to greener pastures, went south, went to sandier beaches.
Yes.
By the way, on the subject of here we are, it's the hot stove season. Tucker Barnhart is now a Detroit Tiger. I will say that I would, if I had a vote, put Buster Posey in the Hall of Fame in 5 years.
Well, you'd have to get in front of Peter Gammons to make that happen. He's already, banging at the door. So the irony is I don't really hear a lot of people opposing that. Have you, Mick?
I love Buster Posey.
Yeah,
I mean, I think he's one of the greatest players of our lifetime. He's the Cal Ripken of this generation to me.
Absolutely. But Gammons is, posting like mad on Twitter about, he better make it. And it's like, well, okay.
Who's inside to convince?
Yeah, exactly. So I just find that hilarious. But he should be. He's a great player. He's a great ambassador for the game. He has been the face of that team. If anything, Major League Baseball hasn't really pushed him enough as a face of baseball. And a smart, person like that should be speaking for the sport every day.
Yeah.
I have this philosophy, by the way, about Twitter that the majority of tweets would not occur if the person who is tweeting them simply had their best friend next to them. And they could just, whatever it was that they wanted to tweet, they just shouted that at their best friend and then they could go back and forth. That's all you're putting, is you're putting something that you want somebody to hear, somebody to know right now. And when you're sitting across from your friend, yeah, that's how the conversation goes. But when you're putting it out there for who knows who to shout back at you, oh, how could things go wrong?
See, we need a Twitter filter for the people who have 120 followers and have tweeted 18,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if there's one wish list I could get with Twitter, it would be a filter for the ratio people. Get rid of them.
But it is hot stove season. And so on that note, Kevin, what have you heard about winter meetings?
Well, we're going to have the winter meetings in Orlando. MILB types, those who show up, will be at the Swan and Dolphin. The Major League people will be sequestered at the Bonnet Hilton, which is off-site and probably will be roped off to the max. So you're not going to see any gatherings in the lobby. No trade show. That's dead for forever, from what I hear. Basically, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday morning of meetings. It'll be hybrid. I was told by several owners that they were kind of discouraged to go in the email announcing it. Great if you want to come, but we're going to do hybrid, so don't feel compelled you have to be there. Not generating a lot of enthusiasm like winter meetings often do. I don't think we'll be there. I would love to do a reception, but at this time it doesn't look like we're going to get an opportunity to do past maybe buying some drinks at a bar for some of the awards winners. But not, the owners have separate meetings now. The GMs have separate meetings now. And without a trade show and without the need for Major League Baseball to pay attention to minor league baseball, the winter meetings have sort of lost purpose.
Okay, so I'm throwing this out there. I think that Major League Baseball running minor league baseball, I think one of the big things to have come with this, as the three of us knew, as so many people around minor league baseball already knew, was Major League Baseball is learning, has learned, will continue to learn all those things that it didn't know that were important. All of those ways to sell tickets in the minor leagues, the importance of that local scene and what makes that team special to its local fan base, and what does minor league baseball mean, and so much more. The importance of fireworks. We can keep on talking about all of the lessons that Major League Baseball learned about why systems were set up the way that they were, that they didn't understand. I would argue that the winter meetings is similar in that there are reasons that people look forward to the winter meetings. There are reasons why people attended, and there were things that got done that Major League Baseball, now in taking over, might not understand the purposes that it served, if you know what I'm saying.
Right. And I think part of that's the myth that people outside the industry assume that minor league and baseball operations were both run the same way. And there's a whole big difference between how you run a major league team and how you run a minor league team, besides just sheer scale. Minor league baseball is very retail. I mean, you guys know that. You can wave out your booth and probably know how many people in the crowd, over 100, maybe more. I can guarantee you the major league broadcasters don't do that because the scale it just doesn't allow for it. So they focus on sponsors, where opposed to you guys are very retail. And yeah, they don't know how it works, and that's fine. But then they went in and took control of an industry they knew nothing about. And I don't know. I people didn't come out of the season all that enthused. I mean, I think there's a great sigh of relief for just surviving. But I mean, you guys were on the ground. What was the feeling at the end of the season for you both?
I've mixed bag, some good stuff, a lot of learning. I don't want to be too critical, but it would have been hard for Major League Baseball to take over and do better than minor league baseball had with all that experience. My hope is, and I don't want to be too critical. I mean, it's only 1 year, but I just hope that Major League Baseball learns from a lot of the shortcomings that they had, understanding, like you said, that there's a big difference, and also understanding that whether they appreciate it or not, which I tend to think that they look at minor league baseball as a hindrance and not a asset, that they better know that baseball will be lacrosse, which by the way, I played in college, not to put it down, but lacrosse is not a national game in this country, right? It's a very small pocketed game. Baseball's fan base is shrinking. And I feel like every time I turn around, Major League Baseball does more things to shrink that fan base even further when they have this huge asset, which is minor league baseball, which gets you into a lot of areas that you wouldn't be in without. And it's your biggest advantage over football. And yet, I kind of feel like we took a big step back last year with the contraction and everything else going on. So I'm hoping that they learn from their mistakes, and that they start to realize that if they're going to grow their product, this is the grassroots way to do it. And if they weaken the minor league system to the point where, it continues to diminish, that's going to hurt the big product eventually as well.
I'm concerned about the brain drain. There were so many people who lost their jobs because there was no minor league baseball season in 2020. This has not been an industry that this has been the best industry to go into, and it's exploding, and we need to get the brightest creative minds in, people who don't necessarily love baseball, but they love the opportunities that it presents. That hadn't been minor league baseball recently, and we've lost a lot of long-time minor league baseball lifers in the bargain too. People who've put in tons and tons of years because there aren't the resources. It asks so much of you, and I don't blame people for leaving it and getting jobs that allow them so much better mental health and emotional health. But that's what baseball needs, and that's what specifically minor league baseball needs. Is it needs those kind of fresh, energized folks to come in and just invigorate things. The crossroads for the Oakland A's, as I talked about, there are crossroads for minor league baseball all across the country, team by team, to energize cities, to energize organizations and sell tickets, because that's what it all comes down to on that local level. Is how do you get that community to get right back in and invested in your team? These have been tough months and a tough couple of years. So I hope that things go back the way that they should go. Major League Baseball running minor league baseball. There are ideas coming down from the top from Major League Baseball. The partnership with Marvel is going to be interesting. I just think that it's got to start ground level instead of top level. It's got to start by getting as many great people as we can around the country into cool roles, and whatever needs to happen to reach out to people to bring them into the industry. That is an enormous hindrance.
What made it a whole lot worse, though, is that for many of these markets, their first introduction to Major League Baseball as being the new overlords is, oh, by the way, you got to spend 10 to 12 million dollars on ballpark upgrades.
Yes.
Adios, suckers. It's a terrible way to introduce yourself.
Oh my gosh, how much construction, how much money is getting poured into stadiums around the country right now?
I mean, I actually agree with the facility upgrades. It's just that Major League Baseball bungled it so poorly and is keeping a huge distance from it now. And, you know, everyone's suffering economically right now. Our economy's not back up to normal. And so to ask municipalities, by the way, put some money aside so that players, you know, have a TV lounge is not really the best message. That should have been phased in over the next, longer than what it is now.
I really hope the teams do open up their wallets in terms of the housing, because we'll see what it logistically and realistically is when 2022 rolls around, what player housing is going to be. But I hope that it's significant. I hope that there's that block of apartments that's local or whatever it may be, and that takes off something huge off the player's plate. But we're talking about two separate things. There's been so much focus, and there should be so much focus on the players. And there should be so much focus on the baseball. But we're talking about that other aspect to it, which is all of those people who live in those cities during the off season too. All of those people who don't go anywhere, who are in Tennessee, who are in Sevierville, or they're in Huntsville, or they're in Pearl, or they're in Amarillo, wherever they might be across the country. They matter so much.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens in the next few years. I think it'll work out fine. But there's just a lot of short-term pain right now. And I'm just hoping and praying that next season we get closer to normalcy than where we were this past season economically.
I'm looking forward to increasing pitch clocks. That would be expanded levels. It's something that is greatly needed in minor league baseball is shorter games. And I know that we can talk about at the major league level, oh, we just need more action. And if it's a 4-hour game with tons of action, that's great. But at the minor league level, you've got to have a game where you know when those fireworks are going to be. Or you've got to have a game where the kids and their parents are not leaving early because it's gotten too late. 3-hour game would just be dandy.
So do you guys have earlier start times with your games? Are they 7 or 6:30 or even 6?
We've gone earlier in April. But then in general, we go 7 o'clock the rest of the year. And we did go, I think we went 6:30 for the 4th of July.
Yeah, our games are at 7. I think like pretty much 7. And then 2 o'clock on Sunday, which has been nice because with Monday off, it kind of gives you a little bit more time off, so there was a debate. Some of the teams decided to do Sunday night games. And honestly, just talking with Smokies president, Chris Allen, he kind of felt like you have to manage for your employees as much as you do the fans. And that was kind of one of those things where, if you want to make a couple extra dollars, play the night game. But if you want to take care of the people that take care of you, and give them the extra day off, the players and the staff, then play the day games. And I thought that was great logic, especially in this world right now where it's hard to get people to show up to work.
Here's my other soapbox. I don't like the 2 homestands in a row or the 2 road trips in a row. So we're now doing the 6-game series, right? What I saw in 2021 was every single team that had those 12 home games in 13 days was dragging by the end and burning people out. So if there's any ideal way that you could put together that schedule that goes home, road, home, road, home, road, I see no reason why you wouldn't have that.
Well, they should be able to. I mean, logistically, there's no mathematical reason why not.
And
It's just there's everyone wants to be home the 4th of July week though, and it- you're gonna irritate some people, but I'm not entirely sure the minor league people schedulers really care that much about that right now.
I just think burnout is enormous, especially in minor league baseball, especially with all the young employees that you bring in college, interns, or just out of college. That's an easy way to take care of everyone is you cannot let there be two homestands in a row. And I know that in the 2022 schedule that it's continuing, that teams continue to have those two homestands in a row, and it crushes teams. It's not a good idea.
Yeah, I hate him
Anyway,
too.
soapbox.
No, I hate him too. Look, I mean, before we wrap up, I hate him too. You know, like there just gets to the point where you're like, yeah, I've been here for like a month now, you know, and but that's the part about playing these long series that, you know, in our league, you know, they're all 6-game series now, right? And so you're talking about 12 straight games. At least you get the off day in there. But you know, towards the end of it, I mean, it's just it does get fatiguing. And I'll say this though, being with the Smokies, it is so much fun to be at work. I mean this, like, I enjoy it so much. Like I just have a good time doing it. Like it's fun. It's fun to work with the people I work with, and you know, you talk about our fans. You know them. Our owner's great, so I could see being in some of these situations where you don't work for the type of people that I do, and it's absolutely just be miserable. And a lot of teams aren't even sending their broadcasters on the road anymore. So it's not like you're getting relief by getting away from the situation, you know? So thankfully we still travel.
Yes, agreed.
I can't imagine running a team and not sending a people like you in the road. I mean, you not having that presence there is just it takes away from the ambiance of broadcasting a game.
I know.
I mean, and separate from that, Kevin, media relations wise, roster moves. When roster moves happen, somebody needs to share them. Oh, look, a new player is joining us. What's his uniform number? You cannot have the PA announcer not know which pitcher is coming into the game, or
Yeah.
who's this pinch hitter, or what's the starting lineup. There are so many different roles that are fulfilled by having that media broadcast person on the road.
Absolutely.
Baseball lingo and our non-baseball lingo, which has not appeared in the Baseball Thesaurus. Did the two of you happen to see PETA's statement released not all that long ago?
Oh yeah. I actually liked it. I mean, I didn't like the lecture, but I kind of like Arm Barn. I got to admit.
The fun thing for the way that language works, so PETA says, don't use the term bullpen. Here's what bullpen means when it actually comes to the world of animals and what the experience is like for bulls. Therefore, use the term arm barn. And when you just put a term out into the air, especially in a game like baseball where we have so much fun with language, you are going to see it used ironically, and irony turns into it'll be used unironically. And I could see it would not surprise me either if we all forgot about Arm Barn in 3 years, or if somebody somewhere keeps it alive and it just starts to refer to a bullpen as a synonym, and it even gets forgotten that it was PETA that came up with it in the first place. Hey, they're going to the Arm Barn.
Yeah, put it in your next book, and everyone will just adopt it.
You know, if I'm running the Omaha team, if I'm Marty, I'm down the road talking to my local implement dealer and saying, man, let's brand the bullpen as the John Deere International Harvester Arm Barn and go with that theme. I mean, play it up, use the term. It's actually a great term, but they won't.
I mean, I think about wrestling. In wrestling, the move is the arm bar. So that was immediately what came to mind first is, are they making an allusion to an arm bar right now?
Heck, I even deck out the bullpen as a barn, and embrace the fun of it.
I know I've talked about this on these chats before, but I'll just bring this up real quick. The whole idea for the bullpen in the first place was that there was spillover for the crowd. So the crowd was penned up outside of the lines, and you brought your 9 players to go play. And when you started bringing more than 9 players, because what if you needed a second pitcher, you put that pitcher into that spillover area. So if you now have an area where you are putting your backup pitchers, this became the bullpen. It was that spillover area for the fans was called the bullpen. There's your bullpen. Durham Bulls, eat your heart out.
Yeah, it didn't have anything to do with the Bull Durham sign that appeared in ballparks 30 years after the term was coined. On Twitter, MLB's historian John Thorne was kind of apoplectic about this, pointing out, how absurd it was. And it was kind of absurd. And if anyone at PETA had any sense of humor whatsoever, this could have been a huge viral win for them. Instead, they were lecturing us as speciesists, and it didn't work.
About John Thorne, by the way, number one, he has a great sense of humor. And number two, that man does not suffer nonsense.
No, and he was not suffering nonsense on Twitter that day. He dove right into it, which I absolutely love him for.
I'm looking on ballparkdigest.com. Farewell to the Green Bay Booyah, who have become the Green Bay Rockers, and one of the rare, actually, our new nickname is not the most shocking name in the world.
Yeah, well, they went from, a team named for a stew to a generic term likely to be used by old people. So,
or Cleveland, right? The Cleveland Rockers.
Well, there's already the High Point Rockers in the Atlantic League. So it's not even unique. And yeah, Cleveland Rockers, WNBA. I get it. Don't like it, but I get it. But
this seems to be name and image rebranding season on ballparkdigest.com.
Yeah, there's a few more that's going to be coming out. Things got stalled by COVID, obviously. There's a really terrible one coming down the pike, and I can't tell you what it is, but you'll know it. You'll know it when you see it. You'll say, that's what Kevin was talking about.
It's not the fish sticks or the seal slingers, is it?
I kind of like that. No, it's not. But you will know it when you see it. You're going to go, really? Out of all the names to pick from, that's what they chose?
Mick, in calling games in what was the Southern League, did you ever say the Jumbo Shrimp? What are we doing here?
The Trash Pandas was the team that kind of took me a while to get used to, but you know what? I got there and I understood, like it was cool. Like I kind of was late on board, but you know what? If the people there get behind it, then they kind of can win you over in a situation like that. So yeah, I like the Jumbo Shrimp. The mascot's my favorite one in the league.
How large is he?
He's big. Yeah, he's big. Of course he is. Scampy.
He's Jumbo.
Yeah, I love him. Yeah. Jumbo. That's right.
Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I have none. I love the Jumbo Shrimp. I love the Trash Pandas, and I want to go out pointing out that they sold $1.4 million of merchandise during the COVID off time.
Nice. Yep. Hey, good. Always good seeing you guys. Let's do it again soon.
We will.
More oxymorons in team baseball names. For Mick Gillispie and Kevin Reichard, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, and this has been your Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat.